Hi there, welcome to the latest edition of my 10-minute moans. And the topic of this one is the continued support the Scottish Government have given Fujitsu in contracts since they were well aware that there was issues with the Horizon, which Horizon was the system Post Office had bought from Fujitsu and led to many sub-postmasters receiving jail sentences for crimes that they possibly didn't commit because the Fujitsu Horizon system was recording incorrect data and not doing what it should have done. Now, before I go on to tell you about what's happened with the Scottish Government since, it's very, very important that you understand one key difference between the Horizon jail sentences and convictions in Scotland to those in England and Wales. In England and Wales, the Post Office took out civil cases against their sub-postmasters, and they were obviously found guilty, went to jail, all this nonsense. However, in Scotland, the Post Office didn't need to do that because the Crown Office Prosecution and Fiscal Services, which is in Scotland who prosecute people, they took almost 100 sub-postmasters to court, found them guilty and charged accordingly, almost 100. Now, the Scottish judicial system is headed up by the Lord Advocate and is in fact also the Chief Prosecutor for Scotland, who obviously was been heavily involved in these cases to the sub-postmaster. Now, the reason that you need to know that that's a thing, you need to know those facts, is twofold. One, you'll then question Scottish Parliament, particularly Humza Yousaf, and Scottish MPs going hard at Westminster for these unsafe convictions and using it as a sort of political knife to stab them with. They didn't prosecute anybody. The Post Office in England and Wales prosecuted people. However, Humza came out and said very, very clearly that for years he had been pressing and asking questions about these situations. So he's already suggested that he was aware that there was a problem because he claimed that the Scottish National Party had been pressing people for years about these unsafe convictions. And as I spoke about in a previous video, who he was actually questioning, I can only beg it to belief, because it would in fact been the Scottish Government. Because the Lord Advocate is part of the Scottish Government and is in fact on the Scottish Government Cabinet, a Cabinet Minister. Anyway, so that's important that you know that. Now that you know that, you also need to understand that sometime in 2012, 2013, the Scottish prosecutors stopped prosecuting sub-postmasters when the Horizon system was the biggest part of the evidence against them. That was nearly 10 years ago. Because the Scottish Prosecution Service knew fine well that Fujitsu's system was inaccurate and that these convictions were probably and possibly unsafe and done nothing for 10 years until a dramatisation came out. And now what they are going to do is look at each case individually. Now, to be fair to the Dorothy Bain, the current Lord Advocate, she was slaughtered a wee bit recently because people were suggesting that she's sort of already said that she can't just do a blanket, find everybody not guilty and overturn all these convictions. And I tend to agree with that. Although out of the number just under 100 sub-postmasters that were convicted, I think it's fair to say that the vast majority will have been convicted inaccurately because of Horizon. However, I don't think for a minute that every single one of them can be admonished because some of them may have committed a crime. And I think it is probably the best thing to do is look at them on an individual basis. But I would think and would like to hope that would be done quickly so that any unsafe convictions can be overturned as quickly as possible. But I do think, against public opinion probably, I do think it's wise that they're looked at individually rather than just tell them they're all not guilty and overturn convictions when some of them could probably be quite safe and for quite serious crimes. However, again, you need to remember that the Scottish Government were aware back in 2012-13 that these things were unsafe, and the Fujitsu system, Horizon system, was key, right? Then we fast forward. The Scottish Government and Fujitsu signed a 5-year contract in 2020. Now, what that 5-year contract was for election software, services, training, and e-counting. E-counting for counting ballots, ballot papers. These e-counting systems are not used for Scottish Government or indeed for Westminster votes. They're only used for local government voting, council votes. And this deal was to provide election software, services, training, and e-counting, as I said, and the software infrastructure, printing and distribution of all ballot papers, counting of the votes, and the results. This was in 2020. This is 7 years after the Scottish Government knew that the Horizon system from Fujitsu was unsafe. Now, the local elections in 2007 have used e-counting to count the ballots. However, the very first time they used it, there was an inquiry into it because it was found that tens of thousands of votes were rejected by e-machines without any human approval. So they're sort of not safe. So in a system that's not safe, in 2020, our government, SNP government, done a deal with a company that they knew had an unsafe Horizon system, already convicted almost 100 people in Scotland unsafely. Now, in 2021, Fujitsu celebrated on their website that a Scottish Government contract that would boost public services in collaboration with ScotGov. So we know, because I've got the facts there, I'll put links to them in the description, that in 2020 we'd done a deal for the e-count and stuff, but in 2021 there was another deal done. But as is usual with a lot of these things, they're just the press release is full of buzzwords. So it's difficult to actually understand what we bought off them in 2021. But with information I've got in front of me, which I'll provide, we've definitely done a deal in 2020 for the e-count and stuff, and it looks as if we've done a further deal to help boost public services in collaboration with ScotGov in 2021. Now, since 2021, I can find news articles that quite clearly state that Fujitsu's Horizon thing wasn't right. And I'm quite sure that I could find further back ones stating, that it was a well-known fact that Fujitsu's Horizon system was unsafe. But we know the Scottish Government in 2013 knew, or 2012 knew, that it was unsafe because they stopped prosecuting people where the evidence was stacked by data from the Horizon system. So why on earth, in 2020 and potentially 2021 as well, and God knows many others that I just can't find because I don't have the information to go and look for them, so there could potentially be more, why would a government continue to support this business that they would have known fine well had a shitstorm coming? Now, I can't sit here and tell you Fujitsu's e-counting system is good, bad, or indifferent. I'm not saying that. I'm not sitting here saying that that's as bad as Horizon. But what I'm saying is, why deal with them at all? Why would you sit there and deal with a company that you know fine well that a shitstorm's coming? It just beggars belief to me. Now, there's only one or two possible outcomes here. The Scottish Government can't really even claim the first one. But if let's just pretend for a minute the Scottish Government did not know about these things, issues with Fujitsu, then you shouldn't be in power, because plenty of people knew back in 2013 that there was a problem with Fujitsu. But if you did know that there was problems there, why on earth would you continue to support the business, knowing fine well that the only outcome was going to be this shitstorm that we're having currently regarding Fujitsu and the Horizon? And, I dare say there must be loads of possible other companies you could have used. Why not just use them? And The Scottish Government, no different from other governments, there's probably more SPADs, that's special advisors in the Scottish Government, than there is ministers. So, with all that resource, did nobody at one point say, hold on a minute, we're probably better staying away from them, because remember that thing we learned in 2013? It ain't too squeaky clean. So, we need to advise you that going with them would be pretty bad. Because when this thing blows, it's going to blow big, and then people find out that you continued to deal with them after having knowledge that their system didn't work and put people in jail because it was inaccurate. And there's another thing in this which I've not been able to do full digging, but I will when I have a bit of time to look further into it. But there were suggestions 2-3 years ago that the Scottish Government, through the Scottish Government itself, National Health Service, local councils, had given away hundreds of millions of pounds worth of contracts without going through the proper procurement process. The proper procurement process would be looking for best value by looking for comparisons of whatever it is you want to buy over a certain limit. I'm not talking about paper clips here, but any pure proper value contracts that you would look for competitive and like for like comparisons through the post process before you procure any services. And there was lots of, I managed to find a couple of articles about this, and again, I don't know why I missed it at the time. I just probably wasn't as politically bothered at the time, to be perfectly honest with you. This politicalness, I'm not even sure if that's a word, political awareness that I've had is quite a new thing in my life. I always knew about politics, but it's only recently I've just had enough of the nonsense at the SNP. I've been down to Scotland that I became, quite passionate about it. It's a relatively new thing for me. But there were stories 2 or 3 years ago about these hundreds of millions of pounds. I think the figures were like 500 and 600 million pounds worth of stuff that they'd found, where the Scottish Government, through NHS as well, and local government, had not went through the proper processes. I am not aware if not Fujitsu are on that list, but I will do my damnedest to find out, because it would be show just another example of how inept these people are. I'm not going to say corrupt, because I have no evidence to suggest such. However, it is a possibility, and I will dig to find more information. And God forbid we've not done deals with Fujitsu skipping the proper procurement channels, because that's bad. Anyway, if you enjoyed the video, give me a thumbs up. If you want to see more, subscribe and hit the notifications in the corners here. There'll be some recommendations, but most importantly of all, have a great day. Bye now.